All right, Alex Sterner, great to have you on the pod, man. Great to speak to you. For those who don't know who Alex Sterner is, I would say you are the pioneer of Jiu Jitsu strength and conditioning from back in the day, Electrum Performance. I don't know if you want to take that, but I remember following you when I was, I think it was like 2000. What did you start? 2017, 2015? And I was like, I want to find who's putting out good content for strength and conditioning, specifically for jiu-jitsu, and it was Electrum Performance, and you guys were just, you had all the ATOS guys, Andre Galvao, just putting out great like top tier content of simple shit, man. Nothing has changed since then, I would say.
Yeah, I appreciate that, dude. It's been a long journey, you know. I even remember when I was in school, we were in like this sports administration class, and they were asking, we're all exercise science majors. They're asking people what they want to do professionally, right? And like you had a full gambit. You had guys that wanted to get into the MLB as a strength coach. You had guys that wanted to be in the Division One weight rooms. There was a guy that wanted to be and now does work in NASCAR as a strength coach, which I thought was wild.
Sick.
And they got to me, they got to me, and this is like 2011. And they're like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, man, I want to get into strength and conditioning for combat sports, like ideally jiu-jitsu. And they were like, oh, okay. So like, where is there like, any sort of like academy or anything where you can do that or learn under somebody? And I'm like, no. And it was kind of fun. Like at that moment, it was like a stupid teenager, right? Like, I think I was like, 20, 19, something like that. That was before the UFC Performance Institute. There were no real avenues for it, you know? And it was kind of like a dumb teenager's dream. I mean, 2015, I moved out to San Diego, started training and competing at ATOS. And the goal was like, hey, maybe if I take like a long-term approach with these guys, like, and actually compete and throw myself at it and get into the team and stuff, like I'll earn their trust and maybe I can start training some of these guys. Who knows? Like that's the best thing I knew how to do at the time. Yeah. And literally like 2 months later, JT Torres came to me and he was fresh off meniscus surgery. It was the first major injury of his career. And he was like, dude, like, I know this is what you do. I want to at least do some sessions with you, see if this is a good fit. And if it is, like, I want to sit down. I want to map out my competition schedule for the year. He was like the dream client for so many reasons. And he's also, I don't know if you've ever been around him. He's got like this infectious positive attitude, right? So like, as soon as he was on board, he was 100% on board. We were planning stuff out. And then he was like singing my praises in comp class. And that just slowly snowballed. Well, not slowly. This all happened way faster than I thought. Quickly snowballed. And then, I'm working with the whole comp team. We were running team lifts, which felt like a D1 weight room, just renting out some space and bringing all the guys in there. Man, it's been a hell of a ride, but I love it. And I also love how this area of strength and conditioning has grown. Like, dude, to see guys like you, dude, talk about content and stuff. Like, you are pumping out great stuff. Like, there are a lot of really good minds now in this space. And I think it's important for the sport, right? Like, if you're not learning how to keep your body healthy, how to improve different metrics for performance, that's how a sport stays in the dark ages, you know? So I think it's important stuff. I love it. I love seeing it grow and getting to meet people like you.
It's funny. I had a podcast with Roman Jiu-Jitsu last Monday, and we're talking about like, if you think about how every other sport operates, basketball, NFL, probably NHL, all these collegiate sports. If you do those sports when you're in high school and you're in a good team, you go to practice 2 to 3 times a week. You lift weights 2 to 3 times per week. That's it. You're just on schedule. You just run that schedule the whole way through to your professional career. Whereas jiu-jitsu, it's an individual sport, right? And most people who join jiu-jitsu they didn't have that. The majority of them didn't do team sports or make those selective teams. So they never grew up with that experience. So when it comes to resistance training, they're like, oh, what do I do? Why would anything change from these elite other contact sports to jiu-jitsu? Of course, it's basically the same thing to a degree. Of course, there's going to be some different nuances, But why would it be any different? And that's, that's why I think we see so many snake oil charlatan types in this area, because they're just allowed to kind of flood in because there's no official kind of structure towards them, which is great. And again, like to your point, that's why it's great to see more and more people coming through being like, this is just a sensible way to train. Just do this. And obviously this is the correct way to do things. And I think more and more of those people are getting flushed up.
Yeah. And I mean, I also think there's a lot of additional reasons, not just the fact that it's not established and ingrained into like, feeder programs and stuff like that. Obviously that plays a role. But there's a couple things that this is going to be some speculation. I got two big factors to why S&C isn't as rooted in jiu-jitsu as other sports. One, I don't think this is a hot take. I think one of the early things that grabs a lot of people is like this central tenet to jiu-jitsu that the smaller, weaker, less athletic person with superior technique can overcome the stronger, more athletic. We've all seen the videos of like, a bodybuilder who knows nothing, by the way, knows no sort of grappling.
Yeah.
Getting, tapped out by a dude got 80 pounds on, right? And so people sort of latch on to this fantasy and think that plays out, at the highest level when people both have levels of training. And it's kind of, it's a little bit fallacious if you think that that's just going to carry you for forever. And I think the second thing, this is where I'm going to make a bit of assumptions, right? But I don't know if you've ever grabbed a group of jiu-jitsu guys and gone and played, soccer's an exception if you got some Brazilians because you'll have some athletic dudes there, right? But if you ever go and play any other ball sport, even just like slam ball or like whatever, right? Like at the beach, even throwing a frisbee around, you're like, okay, I think I get it. Like these guys weren't three-sport athletes, right?
Yeah.
They weren't growing up in this atmosphere. And if anything, I actually think that a lot of these guys have a little bit of resentment from being the last dude picked on the basketball court and stuff. And they sort of like, they want to separate from like these jocks, right? Like we're not like them. We're not like those guys. Our sport's harder or whatever it might be, right? And so because jocks are well ingrained into the strength and conditioning atmosphere, they're like, no, we don't do that stuff. And it creates like this counterculture type of feel where they don't want to do the stuff that the football player who threw them in a locker when they were a freshman was doing. You know what I mean?
There's a bit of trauma.
Again, that's more of a hot take. That's more of an assumption. Yeah. So I think that kind of plays into it too. Plus, there's the conspiracy theorist crowd, which I think is a bit bigger in jiu-jitsu as well, where they love entertaining these like alternative, like non-mainstream type of things, right? Like they enjoy it. Jiu-jitsu's kind of like one of those things. So if you got a fascia trainer who says that, oh, the mainstream's trying to hide the 22 kilos of fascia, then they're like, yeah, fuck the mainstream type deal,
The fascia thing is crazy. And you do see that kick off. And like when I'm making videos, like the amount of times I've seen people go the Soviet method or the shock method or the Eastern Bloc thing. Like, bro, you've literally done zero research. Like, what the fuck? Yeah, I know. This is exactly why I wanted to get you on, because you're very articulate, and I want to hear you fucking go off on them. But it's like you have no evidence. You obviously haven't looked at like Musala Evoli, who hasn't lost in 6 years, Greco-Roman wrestling. It's a bit of hard work to find his lifting to find his lifts on TikTok, Instagram, but you can find them. It took me an hour to get all his clips together. Bro, the guy can clean over 120 kgs, benching over 120 kgs for multiple reps, squatting 140, easy. It's like that doesn't happen with fucking fascia training. That takes years, especially for a Greco-Roman wrestler. It takes years of practice to continue to build that fucking solid foundation of strength. Same for Better Beef, same for Bivol. All these guys, they all bench, they all squat, they're all doing their proper S&C because that's what they do from the grassroots up. And it's outrageous when people are like, yeah, they're doing this. Like, no, they're not. They do, like, you've taken a small clip of something, maybe like they're doing a weird exercise because they enjoy it, or you can't just look at like a clip of what they're doing and be like, that's all they do, because it's not true. You don't know, you have no context within that.
Right.
Clip.
Right. And even a ton of athletes who then, there's like that Antonio Brown clip on Joe Rogan where he's talking about fascia training, which by the way is occurring after he retired, right? So like you're telling me as he went up through the NCAA program, they're doing power cleans in the weight room and he's like, actually, I'm going to do my toe curls instead, coach. Like hell no. He built
No.
his base with all of these other things. And just because he enjoys a little bit of this like really low threshold stuff now that he's like retired and washed up, I mean, great, but don't act like that built him. It didn't, And before we even get to like like the propaganda methods that these guys use, like okay, so there's a lot of things that make up the series elastic component of the musculotendinous junction, right? And to be fair, fascia is one of the components. I don't think it's a heavy hitter, right? I think tendon plays a massive role in that stretch shortening cycle, right? Muscle plays a role as well. But like, are you really going to tell me that doing regular counter movement jumps, right, with this elastic recoil that they talk about so much? So, right, we're doing that counter movement, we have the amortization phase, etc. You're telling me that the adaptations that occur there when you train those movements and improve your output over time, that's only improving these other qualities and it's not going to improve if the fascia, let's just give the benefit of the doubt that the fascia is a major player, which I also think is crap, but let's just say that it is. You don't think doing counter movement jumps is going to improve the output of that tissue? Like your body, like they love to cite the SAID principle. Okay, the imposed demand is improving output and decreasing ground contact time in these counter movement activities. Wouldn't the fascia go along for the ride and adapt just like all the other tissue? I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. Like if you just train for output, you just identify different outputs that you want to improve and you train with intent and you practice those motions and get better at them. Like all of the tissue, you're not going to do one specific thing that's only going to target one component of that. All of those tissues are working together, right? So even if it's a big player, and you've got plyos in your program. I know that you are obviously, a big proponent of having plyometrics in a plan. So let's just give the benefit of the doubt for the sake of argument that fascia is a big player. Well, starting your sessions with some plyos, all sorts of plyos, ones that focus on pure rate of force development or more impulse work, things that are focusing on shorter ground contact times, doing things in multiple planes, like even arguing fascia guy, quote unquote, versus like a non-fascia guy like you and me, like, wouldn't our training encompass that anyways? Like, just because we're not doing some little weird thing with a towel on the ground doesn't mean that tissue is not going to go along for the ride. It's totally going to, you know?
It's wild to see. When they talk about it's the abdominal sling and the rotational sling, it's like, why do you think rotation is the only way things work? Like, why, why do you think like
And,
rotation is the only way that the trunk moves? Like, what are you talking about?
and it's also wild. You look at guys that are dependent on explosive, twitchy rotation. I love to look at like, batters in baseball, right? These guys, dude, they're squatting, right? They're doing things to increase like force output at large, and it doesn't have to be like this like hyper focus on specificity where like, oh, I have to only train rotation to improve output in rotation is wild to me. What are the largest muscles involved in a baseball swing? Those are the lower body, right? You get a dude and you get him to add 50% in terms of his output in a squat or a squat like motion, a lunge, a leg press, etc. Something in the primarily sagittal plane.
He's hitting that
He
ball better.
will, he's gonna hit that ball further, and like, yeah, I mean, you shouldn't. I think the one area where rotation is maybe like most applicable in the gym is some power motions, right? Some med ball throws, stuff like that. But I don't even think that's the big player if you're looking to increase your output in rotation. I think it's still training those like super respondable large muscles. I mean, here's the thing too. If let's again take our biases out of it for a second, because I'll happily throw my biases back in after. Um, if we're really going to argue that fascia is the thing we should focus on, then why is muscle so obviously adaptable? Like, if we just remove all our biases, why is muscle something that adapts so rapidly? It changes so much based on the stimuli placed on it. It's like one of the most adaptable, if not the most adaptable tissue in the body. Why is that? Right? Yet some of these guys will claim like, the mainstream muscle model is wrong. What do you mean it's wrong? If you just got a hyper adaptable tissue, like, why would you not train the crap out of that? It's like, it's so clearly sensible. I don't know.
I think they're just a conspiracy theorists at the end of the day, because it's like mainstream training and mainstream this. It's like you literally just sound like a conspiracy theorist. Like, do you watch any sport? Have you been living under a rock for your entire life? Do you not see what's going on? Like, how is everyone getting it wrong and you're the only person getting it right? But that's cult. That's how you start a cult, and that's how you go insane, and it's how you get all these crazy cult followers, isn't it?
And it's an engagement.
It's engaging, yeah, because it's like it just drives engagement, because it's polarizing. Fascia, Ilia Topuria hits really well because he's focused on the rotational slings. No, he doesn't. He's literally there's literally a clip of him saying, "Bro, I saw this clip. We'll come back to Bivol in a second. There's a clip of Ilia Topuria being like, 'I've always had power,' and some people just do. They have it, and he's been boxing for a long time. There's a clip of Bivol. Do you know who Dmitry Bivol is?
I don't.
He's the best boxer in the world right now, I would say. Okay. He had a fight with another guy called Artur Beterbiev, and Beterbiev won the first fight, and they had a rematch. Bivol won the second fight. Both of these guys were undefeated when they fought each other. They're both just fuck up every single one they fight. There's a clip of Bivol, some rich guys asking him, how do I do this technique? How do I learn the Soviet style? And he's like, you're never going to learn the Soviet style. You're never going to learn to hit like me. And the guy's like, why? He's like, because you didn't learn to do it. I've been doing this my whole life. You will never learn to do it. And even if you do try to learn it, it will make you a worse boxer. What you need to do is add on to what you already have. You're not because it's easier. It's what you trying to unwrap all of this technique and whatever you have now is too difficult. Do what's easier. Just add to what you have, because you will never hit like me, because I've done this my whole life. And people get confused when they see that at sport. Like, they just when they look at the highest level of sport, you have to factor in people that you're looking at the elite of the elite, and you're going to see all the freaks out there. But if you're a hobbyist, you're training for longevity, and if you keep a program simple that keeps you in the weight room and progress, building muscle tissue, which, as you said, builds rapidly. It's so quick. Literally in a matter of weeks, you can be like, I'm way stronger than I was before. Even tendons and ligaments, that takes a long time. I don't even know what the adaptations of fascia would be. What does it do? It lengthens it short. What's the adaptation? Tendons get stronger over periods of months and years. But it just takes longer, but it adapts. What does fascia do? I don't understand.
It's wild. And I think there are elements of fascia that have been somewhat mapped out, and these guys just take that mechanism and just run with it, right? Like, oh, it's viscoelastic. I mean, cool. But again, like, relative to the rest of the series elastic component, like, are we really going to argue that thin layer of connective tissue is even a drop in the pond compared to the elasticity of a tendon, especially like lower body tendons? Like, you want to really see what moves the needle. Like, seriously, walk up to somebody. Have you ever like touched an Achilles tendon of a jumper? Like, don't tell me about let's not even talk about fascia. Dude, their Achilles it's like something that belongs on a racehorse, right?
It's thick as fuck, man.
And then touch your own Achilles and be like, okay, that's why this dude can jump 30% further or higher than me, right?
That's your stretch reflex as well, right? That's like it's short, sure. It fucking bounces.
For
We
sure.
take
And so like we're gonna measure, like that tensile strength, right? You're telling me that anything's gonna hold a candle to like, yeah, the Achilles tendon? It's a joke, dude. It's a complete joke.
retarded. Absolutely retarded. How's the training with the boys going, man? When did you when did you really start kicking off? On not even just on socials. Like when did Kanan start training with you? Kanan, when did Galval start training with you? What did that look like? So you said you ran to the gym, you were training some of the boys in there because you're like, fuck it, I know what to do. Let's get them all in. Let's get them lifting. What kind of progressions did they see once they started lifting with you? And like, what kind of what in your head actually? Sorry, what protocols were you like? Oh, I'm just going to run them through this because I know this is going to be sick.
Okay. Yeah. So essentially, once I had JT, there was like a specific day that I remember where Andre is in camp for ADCC, and JT is running the sessions. And at the end of class, he just gave like a testimonial in front of everybody else. Andre heard that. Andre reached out to me. He started training with me one on one, and then very quickly I started training him and his wife at his house. And from there, he was like, "Man, let's get a sponsor. Let's figure like how much money do we need for you to train the whole comp team." I started looking into a gym that I could rent out so I could do it all at once. Um, and yeah, that started in 2016.
Cool.
And then by 2017, 2018, everything was running smoothly. Myself and the guy who founded the business with me, Alex
Ace.
Bryce,
Yeah,
yeah,
Bryce.
we were two manning those sessions, and we had a solid, 15, sometimes closer to 20 athletes in there, in like season for those camps. But we ran it year round, which I also think is huge. I'm working on a piece of content. I don't know how to really grab eyes for this, but something that I really try to get through to jujitsu athletes is like if they're on their regular competition schedule, like right now is the world's camp in the weight room because, through the summer, they have the least density of like big important tournaments. Obviously I got some guys doing CJI and stuff. There are exceptions, but like in general, after you hit worlds, like that's when we build those physical qualities. And it's crazy because you look at the average jiu-jitsu athlete who, like you mentioned, is in charge of all their own stuff. They're wearing plenty of hats. They generally aren't going to seek out someone like a strength coach. I mean, even if they do, they're not going to until they're like 8 weeks out from Worlds, at which point their jiu-jitsu training volume is through the roof. They're, potentially cutting weight. They're in a deficit. Our ability to build those general qualities is like severely limited in that camp. So something that I really try to get through to these guys is like when you aren't in a big camp, that's when you're in camp with me. That's when we're really pushing numbers in the weight room. And I try to get them on board with that. We're like, right now, we're building those physical qualities so that when you are cutting weight, when you are upping your jujitsu volume, we're in more of a maintenance phase. Because the first thing that I want to do with those guys is break them out of this vicious cycle where when they go, oh, I'm in camp and they want to go really hard, like if you
Yeah.
haven't been lifting, you start lifting then and you add that stressor in addition to these long competition classes, you're getting shark tanked, whatever. Like that's a great way to burn yourself. The least severe consequence is just burning yourself out. Of course, the most severe, when you add a ton of stressors like that, that's like a recipe for injury. So that's something that I'm big on as well. I really try to push those physical qualities when they don't have a looming big competition and a really hard camp. And then once they do, I dial back the intensity and volume somewhat so that they can really be fresh for those mat specific sessions. And if I have you year round and we can focus on building those qualities when you're not in camp and then just maintaining them as you have all these other variables thrown in, that's like a 10 out of 10. That's a dream scenario for me. And then in terms of the protocols, it's straightforward stuff. When we first started training those guys, we would have, every session. It's funny when you have like a group like that, you can't really, we would, of course, alter and edit things based on existing injuries and stuff. But basically, we'd split everyone into two groups. And on the program, it would say strength one and strength two. Strength one is one lower body movement and an upper body, let's say pull. Strength two is going to be a slightly different lower body movement, let's say a knee dominant instead of the hip dominant up here, and an upper body press. You got half of the guys doing strength one, the other half doing strength two. You got a timer on the clock for them to do that. Boom. You switch it up. You have them then doing the other one, and then we work into our accessory work, etc. There would obviously be certain days where we would have a bit of a power focus instead of the accessory work, because when you're working with a big group, we had to sort of pick and choose how we were attacking it. So some of those days we'd be starting with the power work and then get into strength one and two. Other days it would be strength one and two, and then we'd move into some accessory work. And the accessory stuff is, the typical meat and potatoes, whether it's some arm work we're doing that day, whether it's something that's a little bit more grip focused. Some days, especially in camp, we would, instead of accessory work, we'd be doing a little bit more energy system work. Again, when you've got like these top tier competitors, I really like to build a lot of their conditioning and aerobic base in that off season. I want them going into camp with those conditioning qualities already up there. And then I'm not looking to fatigue. They want to come in there and hit the assault bike and do these crazy intervals when they're in camp. But I'm like, look, we want to manage that fatigue at this point, So I think the big thing as well is really focusing on those more fatiguing elements in the off season, and then really just looking to maintain them, keep tissue quality and stuff like that as they get into camp. So that's kind of a long-winded overview as to how I look at training jiu-jitsu athletes.
Amazing. It's good shit, man. It makes complete sense. Look, like you need to, you're not going to build the work capacity that you need to if you're only training, twice, two, 3 times a year for 8-week periods. You're not going to do it. Work capacity takes it just takes ages to build. And if you're a freak athlete, obviously it's going to be faster. But it makes sense. You got to build that. You got to build that engine outside. Manage fatigue when you're in the camp. That's good shit. And you can see with your athletes as well. Your guys are lifting heavy fucking shit, man. And it takes time to do that. And you ain't going to be pushing them that much when they've got a big tournament coming up in 2 or 3 weeks time.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I kind of become their worst enemy in camp because these guys, you tell them to do something, they want to go hard, right? And in the off season, like I'm down with it. You want to push hard weights, you want to really hit a heavy single this week. If we've been working up on that exercise, let's fucking do it. But yeah, as soon as we get in camp, it gets annoying to them because I'll be like, hey, let's dial back a couple reps from failure. They hate that, dude.
But that's a good coach.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you've got to be willing to take that role. You also got to recognize how, a competitor is going to differ quite a bit from a hobbyist, not just in terms of schedule and stuff, but also in terms of their approach, right? Yeah. If I give those guys, it's funny, when I first started with JT, I was using like a modified 5-3-1 at the time because it worked well for me. I loved that. It was a low maintenance thing to program. It's a very easy thing to get them on board with. But I really quickly recognized having open-ended AMRAP sets are not good for jiu-jitsu competitors. Those guys will kill themselves. I would have their predicted. It would be like, okay, this is going to be a 3+ set based on what you've performed in the past. You'll probably get 4 or 5 reps. And they're hitting 7, 8, sometimes 9, and then they're fucked up. I had guys, there were times where like JT, I remember one of the days on his deadlift, it was like a 3+ or something like that, and I stopped him at 12 reps, and he had like a tension headache, and I just sent him home. I'm like, bro, great job on that, but seriously, that day I sat down, I'm like, I can't program like this anymore. These guys are insane. They're actually nuts. So I think being able to manage that as a coach as well. There's nothing wrong with the 5-3-1 program. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like trying to talk crap about that. I just think that these guys have crazy muscular endurance as it is, right? So you give them an AMRAP setting, especially something like a deadlift where the bar's resting on the ground for a couple seconds and they can get a breath or two. It's just not the right format for these guys, especially in camp. They'll kill themselves. If you're like, hey, here I want you to go really hard, they're gonna hurt themselves. So I think I've modified that a bit, and I don't do AMRAP. Like Obviously, for something like pull-ups, whatever, we can do AMRAPs, but those heavy compounds, not what we're looking to do.
Great point. That's gonna be one of my questions. What are some like things that you've learned from earlier in your career that you can see that you've made adjustments to later? And that's a perfect example. What else you got?
Yeah, that was one very early on where I was like, okay, these guys are different. We're not doing this. I think another thing. So when I started training them in that group setting. Early on, we did definitely have some power work and stuff, but Bryce and I sat down one day and we were looking at certain qualities. Mind you, this is like 2016, 2017. And we sat down and we wrote like a needs analysis, and we were actually trying to build like an exercise battery, sort of like the NFL Combine, where you have like certain things that can and would predict success at the highest level. And I went a little too far down this rabbit hole for a while, where I made the argument, and you can still make this argument, but I don't think it leads you to a good place. That power is not predictive of success in jiu-jitsu like it is in plenty of other sports, right? You get a wide receiver and he's got a 40-inch standing vert, that dude will exceed. If he's got to get up there and contest a ball, he will get there, right?
Yeah.
You've got certain guys. If we just look at some really successful champions, right? If we look at a guy like Gordon, you look at somebody like Bernardo Faria, you look at Gustavo Batista, who I had the pleasure of working with for years. These guys are not powerful,
Roger
right?
Gracie.
I don't know. Yeah, Hodger Gracie, and
Super
honestly,
not athletic.
well, and I would actually argue that was his downfall in MMA. He could not rapidly produce power. So I started to think, I'm like, you know what? Maybe power work, if it's not predictive of success, what are we doing here? And I started to really work away from it. I always kept a little bit in, but I started to really gravitate a lot more towards strength, isometric strength, and just try to fill in our limited time with more of that stuff. But as you go through well, first off, as many guys as you can find without power as a skill, you've got plenty of guys that are extremely powerful, right? You look at guys like Jansen, you look at guys like Muhammad Ali, you look at, there's Nicky Rod, the list goes on and on. There are powerful guys, and they use that to their advantage. And also, much to your point earlier, like just focusing on where you're at and improving your qualities, like even if Gustavo's never going to have a 33-inch vert, right? That doesn't mean that he wouldn't benefit from improving his power somewhat. So I do think for a while, I started to get really, like I was constantly trying to reflect on my training, trying to audit why we're doing the things that we do. And I moved a little too far, like my pendulum swung a little too far away from power work for a while. But again, as I looked at, then there's also data in terms of like plyometric training plans and how that decreases injury rates further, and improvements in tissue quality that you can get there that you can't get elsewhere. And I've really swung back now, and I think that power training now, looking at it, if I'm having someone do a continuous single leg hop, right? It's like my favorite example. In that half or quarter of a second that they're making a ground contact, they're absorbing their body weight and then re-accelerating back out of there. There is no more potent stimulus that occurs in such a short time frame in anything else that we do. The amount of forces that enter the body and that are produced by the body in that short window are so potent, and it's crucial for joint health. Impact is a very potent stimulus. So I have now swung back in the other direction. That's something that I sort of wrestled with on my own and moved away from, re-examined, and was like, no, we've got to keep that stuff at the forefront. So there's another thing that I think I've changed my mind on. And then one last one was, some of that data came out again. I want to say it was in like the mid 2010s where they were looking at like VO2 max of jiu-jitsu competitors. And it's not impressive. And so I started to really alter my conditioning focus and dropped it in priority. These things never fell all the way out. I was never like, oh, jiu-jitsu guys should never do cardio, right? but I really did sort of preach a different message where I was like, A, if it's not predictive of success, it shouldn't be a super high priority. And then B, if it's not as trainable as something like strength and these changes in tissue quality that are literally you know, an existential subject for these guys, uh, why would we prioritize it over that? And I have swung back on that as well. Yeah, jiu-jitsu guys don't have a crazy high VO2 max. So imagine if you're one of the outliers who does, right? Like that's something that I like to look at where I think that it is extremely valuable. I do push it a bit more. And now for something like that, I've just moved it around in terms of where it's a higher priority instead of dropping it out entirely, right? If I've got a full year with these guys, what are we doing in camp? What are we doing outside of camp? How are we blending those things together and maintaining those variables as we go? So if we're looking at big changes, I'd say those three over the last 10 or so years have been the biggest ones, to the point where now it's funny, I'm like at a place that's not all that different from where I started.
That's
But
the
yeah,
dimwit thing, isn't it? It's the
yeah,
the bell curve thing.
yeah, for
But
sure, for
everyone
sure,
goes on that journey.
for
Everyone who's
sure. And
self-reflective.
that's what I'm saying. Like I am always trying to reflect on these things. I'm trying to improve. I know, like even if you asked me in 2015, 2016, it's like, are you hitting the big rocks? Are you do the important stuff? Like, yeah, I spent time interning in a Division 1 weight room with 8 different sports when I was at school in Yukon, and seeing like, yes, there are differences, but like the overlap across those sports, I'm like, okay, there's certain things that are just gonna be in there. And I interned under multiple strength coaches. Again, there's differences, but there are overwhelming similarities. And I really, even from the onset, have stuck to those similarities. And I've just sort of worked out the kinks in terms of what some of those differences may be.
Yeah. I mean, like having a good squat is great. Having a good hinge is good. You need to have a good push and pull. You need to have strong arms. You need to have a strong neck. How you
Yep.
train those areas is all fairly the same. And then obviously
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be nuances, like you said, on timing, etc. Yeah, bro. The single leg hop is since I started getting my hops good, my legs feel amazing. Like even just walking around day to day, like I nearly roll my ankle quite a lot, like I'm quite clumsy, but like just walking around, you just suddenly feel your ankle go. And like, bro, like since I've started pliers, it's that you just feel fucking solid, especially if you can hop. If you learn how to hop correctly, and that's what I teach all the athletes I work with one to one. It takes ages because if you think about where you're lifting that single leg up to, the inhibition for it to land, it doesn't, of course, it doesn't want to fucking land. It's like, what the fuck are we doing up here? Of course, you want to get the second leg involved or you don't want to lift it up that high. It's, what is it, like four times, but it must be like four times body weight or something upon landing, something like that, I would
Yeah, oh,
say.
it's massive. It's
It's
massive.
massive. But of course, that's going to have great adaptations to your tendons, ligaments. Well, I was listening to Jake Tura talking with Matt McInnes Watson. Shout out those guys, man. They're putting out great work. And Matt is saying, obviously, with the ping tier work where you're working at max velocity, you don't get great adaptations to tendons and ligaments at working at max velocity. The best, the light tier is like, or when you're moving lightly, even if it's tippy tappy stuff where they're talking like, classic fascia, like we're super reactive and running ladders and all that kind of shit. That's just proprioception. You're getting no adaptations to anything at that point. You're just teaching, okay, kind of your ankles are learning that you're just learning that specific move. The best adaptations come from, again, same as lifting, the 80% work. When you can produce force consistently for repeated reps, that's where you get the best work done for the pliers.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, man, another thing that's really piqued my interest lately is, you mind if I get kind of nerdy with the plyometrics for a sec?
Love it, man. Let's go.
All right, so like looking at differences in terms of muscular and tendon actions at that landing and recoil between beginner slash intermediate to advanced to elite. And if we look at something like that single leg hop where you're very rapidly absorbing that weight and creating force again, And I believe this was originally mapped out with basketball players in like their penultimate step before
I'm just gonna
dunking.
move all my shit over here. Hold on. You keep
Yep.
talking.
You want me to just keep going or wait a sec?
Yeah, no, you keep going,
Okay.
man.
Yeah, so you look at someone who's more beginner to intermediate, and as they land, you're going to notice they have a very soft landing, and they're going to move at that landing, they're going to move eccentrically and lengthen through both the tendon and the muscle before the amortization phase, where then they begin to shorten through both of those tissues. You look at someone who's a little bit more, intermediate to advanced, and they're able to maintain a bit more of an isometric. This is when we start to get into like joint stiffness as it relates to these plyos. So the muscle, if we just look at the calf, but this also occurs a little bit more upstream, the calf is able to maintain an isometric upon landing, and the tendon is what's doing the lengthening, and then there's the concentric action from both of those tissues. But if you watch elite jumpers, elite athletes, they're actually able at landing, the whole cue of like attacking or striking the ground is them concentrically shortening the muscle, which actually continues after ground contact. The muscle continues to shorten, which lengthens the shit out of the tendon and allows for a far more rapid recoil, both in terms of force production and just in terms of shortening that ground contact time. And it's pretty cool when you take somebody who's pretty inexperienced with jumping, and there's like a skill component. And then, of course, because we're doing other strength training and other types of plyos and things like that, where you're actually eliciting some of those changes that, like you said, especially with tendons and stuff, take time. But they start to get skill based on where they are in that thing. Some people will be a bit more advanced from the get-go. Some people are going to be totally raw and beginners with like a soft, sticky, slow landing, right? But then some of those changes occur where they're actually capable of more. And a good coach is going to be like, hey, maybe 8, 9 months in, they're going to be like, hey, let's really focus on attacking the ground a bit more. And they're shortening that ground contact. And now they're starting to change to more of that isometric at the muscle, to the most advanced technique that like your hardware is capable of at that point in time, and then allowing those changes to occur, allowing, recording yourself or having somebody coach you. And then as those changes occur and you're capable of shorter ground contacts, really like recalibrating again and relearning that movement to really strike the ground and get off the ground faster. I think it's a fascinating process, and like it's one that it's getting a lot more fun. Whereas like lifting is pretty simple. Like in terms of making progress, you're just kind of like, all right, let's add a little more weight today, right? Or let's do another rep or whatever. It's very obvious, and it happens more rapidly. But this process, there is like that self-improvement and that change that occurs long-term with plyometrics as well. And it's really fun, not just myself working on my own plyos, but with clients as well, taking them from one of those like more beginner phases and moving them onward where they're getting those shorter ground contacts. And we're starting to really see like a very tangible improvement in output. It's a fun process, if you embrace the fact that you're learning all the while and you got to recalibrate as your body changes. It's fun.
Absolutely, man. Getting people to build up to like ping tier hops, it's amazing. Like when you see someone trying their attempt on hops, because I just coach it. I'm like, just give it your best attempt. This is what it looks like. This is what it should look like. Show me your best attempt. They're hiking the knee. They're like all collapsing down. It's like, just relax. It'll take time. Like literally give it 3 to 6 months consistently 3 times a week, and you'll get better. And you literally see them, if they've been consistent after 6 months, you're like, bro, this is amazing. You're hitting the floor. You're getting up straight away. You've got reduced inhibition. You can actually produce force, and it make you more coordinated than when you started. And, we're talking about hobbyists here. That's amazing, because strength training is for life. And if you can learn how to, fucking jump up and down on one leg, you got to be pretty fucking strong to do that. And you have that for life now, if you're consistent with it. And that's a great skill to have, because it's going to keep you more youthful. It's great for your tendons and ligaments, blah, blah, blah. You've won, in my opinion, if you can teach people to do that shit properly.
Yeah, and like someone, they go on some trip where they don't know if they're going to have access to a gym, but maybe they are
Yes.
really like habit driven and they want to do something. I've got like some default plyo programs where it's like, okay, we're not trying to fit in plyos and strength training now. If you've got, man, a 20-25 minute plyo only session is intense, man.
Yeah,
It's
man.
like, so like giving people stuff like that when they're traveling, or like I went on a road trip with my brother last summer, and like between bouts of us sitting a long time, I'm like, man, I'm gonna get out and do some jumps and stuff. Like you don't need any equipment. Yeah, no, I think they're great, man. Super accessible, super cool training tool, and once you get on board with like the progress and it being a little bit different than just like adding weight to the bar, right? And you get bought into like, okay, I'm gonna actually try to get better at this. It's a fun process.
I think it's interesting that you know when you had all the boys in the shed or wherever you were training them before, even just getting them in and just getting them to do the basic compounds, you're going to see such a big bang for buck on that. Even it's like you split it perfectly because you just got to make it work for the room. You got to go, okay, we've got this equipment, we've got that equipment, we just got to make it work. Even if they're just squatting, deadlifting, the upper body push pull. For people who haven't got experience with doing that, if they're just coming in 2 times a week consistently for months on end, bro, it's just uphill results. Bang.
For
They're
sure.
gonna get they're gonna
And
do
also
so well.
And also following a program where you're not, a lot of, again, these jujitsu guys will kill themselves if left to their own devices, right? So, like, having
Yeah.
a plan where you're hitting consistent movements, which limits fatigue over time, allows you to get really good at them, and it's not leaving you too beat up for your jujitsu sessions. It's kind of cool to watch people get bought into that process as well, where they're like, oh, damn, I'm getting strong. And I don't have to like pick and choose, like, oh man, I lifted today. I can't do jujitsu. Like you can totally line it up so you can do both. And it's really not that tough. Like, I don't know about you, but the most common question I get is like, oh man, what's the ideal schedule for, and as soon as someone's asking that, like I've now recognized that that person doesn't, they either A, don't stick to a like consistent plan, because you would notice that if you're sticking to a program, uh, you don't get that sore. And this whole thought of like, how do I fit this stuff in kind of solves itself, right? Or,
Yeah.
excuse me, they're stuck on the bro split where they're hitting one muscle from 8 different angles with multiple exercises and they're chasing fatigue. Where, like, yeah, man, if you're doing like, back and buys, chest and tries, legs, and you're smoking that one region for that session, you are going to be left wondering, man, how do I change my schedule? Because I can't play guard after I hit legs for an hour and 10 minutes. Like, of course you can't. There's a better way, you know?
What's your favorite way to teach people how to manage the intensity they're working in the gym?
I mean, RPE is great. I mean, I go with more reps in reserve.
Me
Uh,
too.
Clients get tired of hearing me ask, but I see a set, I'm always like, hey, how many more reps do you feel like you had there? And it's funny because when you add the extra layer of any sort of like language barrier, like the Brazilians, it takes a while to really get there. They're like, oh, add more weight. I'm like, no, no, no. How many more reps could you have done? And starting to get really good at getting them to gauge that. And then, the appropriate times for us to inch closer to failure, the appropriate times for us to pull a little bit further away, to get people to understand that, like, first off, if I do a set of squats that's 2 reps from failure, truly 2 reps from failure, that's a hard set, dude.
Right. You're gonna be
And
tired after that, man.
yeah, right. So like, letting people know that like, that is actually difficult. Just because it's not maximal doesn't mean that it's not difficult. It totally is. And then two, that even if we're 3 or 4 reps from failure, that is still productive, right? So letting these guys know, like, hey, and something that I actually do, we started to do this early on. It's funny, earlier when I first started working with these guys, I was a blue belt, and it's funny how this stuff also influences you, as like in a group setting. Bryce was a white belt, I was a blue belt. Um, and some of the Brazilian guys that are coming, we had like Ari Farias coming up from Brazil, and he's a black belt. He's been a black belt for a while. Got robbed of that title in 2011. Whatever, right? Like this dude he's the man, right? And trying to get them to trust someone that then they see on the mats later that day is a blue belt.
They're
it
like,
was
what the
kind of
heck?
tough. Yeah. So what Bryce and I started to do early on is once a week at least, one of us would just coach and the other one would lift with the team just so they could actually see us doing, walking the walk as well and being like,
Yeah.
oh damn, A, these guys are strong, and B, wait, they got strong by not absolutely killing themselves on every single rep of every set. You know what I mean? And
Smart.
it's crazy. Man, at that point in time, I think if I came in as a black belt and they just gave me like that level of respect, I don't know if they would have gotten as bought in on the methods. Then truly it was like jungle rules. Like Bryce was a big dude. I'm a pretty big dude. We're like, you know what, we're just gonna lift with these guys and show them that, our belt level in the weight room is a little bit different than our belt level on the mats.
Yeah.
And that was a huge shift then. And then I still do that stuff now. Obviously, I create content. Those guys already see how I lift a bit more consistently now online. But same thing. There'll be times where one of my coaches is running the lift session and I just lift with them and they see like, I remember there was one time with some of these guys that are in here now with Tenka and Adrian, top level brown belts. And I lifted with them one time and I hit a decent number on deadlift and they're like, man, coach, add weight. And I'm like, no, like yes, I can right now, right? And they just want to see, they want to see me load up 6 plates on each side or something,
Yeah.
and have that, right? But also just showing them like, hey, I don't need to kill myself. What I'm trying to do is next week, I want to throw a 5 on each side and hit the same thing, hit it clean, ideally at the same effort level, right? And then there were also times where they saw me like literally, like my deadlift is very touchy on purpose. Like I make this call, right? If I'm feeling super fatigued or if like, my low back is feeling pretty beat up from like a mat specific session, man, week by week, sometimes I'll go 100 pounds lighter because that's an appropriate load selection for that day.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes them seeing that instead of me just like preaching from an ivory tower is really valuable as well. So we make sure to keep a level of that in there as well because we walk the walk. So showing them that allows them to be like, okay, these guys aren't just preaching that. He's not telling me to take it down a notch and he's still going to train really hard and he's holding me back. It's actually, that's
Yeah.
the best way to go about it.
So true. Because people get that mindset. Well, I remember when I was younger, I would go into the gym, smash a session, and be like, "Yeah, fuck yeah!" Come in the next day, the next session, whatever. I mean, I'm gonna try hit that again because I hit that the last session. It's like it doesn't work like that. I was like, tired, or you're recovering from illness, or whatever. You just don't have the same energy, and you pick up the same weight, and you're like getting crushed underneath the bar. You go home, you're like, "Fuck, man, what the fuck happened?" It's like, dude, how can you expect it doesn't work like that. When you feel good, you can push hard within reason. When you don't, you work within the parameters of what you can. And those sessions of compound interest, they pay off. They all contribute to your work capacity and doing great things for your muscles, tendons, and ligaments and bones.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like a maturity component to that too, right? Like
Yeah.
not just trying to snatch what you can every day, flying too close to the sun. Another thing that I think is big with RPE, especially with jiu-jitsu athletes, because like you said, you mentioned a couple stressors, but there's also one huge one of like one day of training is not exactly like another day of training on the mats, right? So the
Yeah.
condition they come into my weight room, even just day to day, is drastically different. So something that I also try to get through with them is like, okay, on a day where we've been on the program for a while, you've been hitting this lift consistently, your ramp ups feel good, and every sign is telling you today might be like a PR day and it's an appropriate time to do so. Yeah, we might go for a weight that we've never done before. Another thing that I like, I really wait on this and I try to teach this moment at like the appropriate time is on a day where we have those signals telling us the opposite. Since we've already written it off that today's not going to be a PR day, what if we actually like our goal now is to still get practice in, like you said, for work capacity, for general adaptation, all these other things. It's important that we still do it, but we've recognized that today's not going to be one of those like days we remember for forever, right? Because everything was perfect, we felt great, cool. The goal now is to do what we can to set ourselves up for that next day as best we can. And with that being said, if 92%, I don't go off percentages, but for the sake of this, let's just, if 92% would be the most you could possibly do that day, but it would drain the shit out of you, then why don't we drop it back a little bit more? Make it 85, 86%, where you're gonna smoke the weight. You're gonna kind of feel like you could do more, which is great because that session is gonna beat you up less. You're going to see less of a dip in performance from fatigue and soreness and everything there. And you're going to get back to that higher readiness even sooner. And we can more rapidly get to our next PR day because we don't beat the ever-loving shit out of ourselves when we know we don't have it. So that's another maturity thing that I think it can be it can fall on deaf ears if you just throw that out there, maybe on a good day or whatever. But when someone's really struggling, like you see them do something that should be a warm-up and they kind of struggle, like that is when I kind of like strike with that little spiel. And I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do today. We're actually looking for, we're lifting today on Tuesday. All right. I want next Tuesday to be as good as possible. I want your session on Thursday to be as good as possible. So today we're going to view this a lot more like drilling, right? Or like, a lighter session of jujitsu where you're going to purposefully just execute. You're going to do it at a lighter level. You're going to take less out of you. We're still going to get our practice in. But the goal, it's not me holding you back. Me telling you to dial it back a little bit today is actually going to get us back to where we can push really hard much sooner. And I think that idea of like playing the long game and knowing when to step on the gas versus when to pump the brakes a little. And also when we pump the brakes a little, pump it a little extra, like by taking a little bit more weight off the bar on that not good day can be the best thing for you in terms of getting back to your next good day. And I think really cementing that also gets people a bit more bought in on RPE, on how to gauge it appropriately, not to go in with these preconceived notions like I hit this much weight last week, so I have to hit this much weight today. Like we just sort of let the process happen. We facilitate those things as best we can. And we try to get you to a point where we're not just running you into the ground all the time. We're trying to get you to where you're back up at a point where you can push new boundaries and feel good about it.
Nailed it, man. Great explanation. How's your Electrum online going? You smashing it?
Yeah, man, it's going well. Yeah, that's been the part of the business that, over the last, I've always known that I wanted the online portion of my business to scale the most. I'm not someone who wants to like franchise locations and stuff. I love having a gym. It's great. But managing people's tough. And I want to pour a lot into the people immediately around me and not be, that's just not the model that I wanted. So I knew I wanted to scale the online stuff. And, since buying Bryce out of his portion of the business and all sorts of things where the dust had to settle, I'm finally on a couple years now where I've found a good balance for myself where I can really get content creation out there. I can really nurture the people that are following my programming, give them the attention that they need and stuff. And yeah, it's going well. It's going real well, actually. And looking to keep that going. That's the part that I want to scale indefinitely.
Love that, man. Are you most of your what percentage of your customers would you say are American versus international?
Online?
Yeah.
A good portion's American, but yeah, we have it's actually pretty common now that we have people from all around the world. There was a guy recently where I had to set something up for him on PayPal because for whatever reason, his credit card, and I want to say it was in like Sri Lanka or something like that, wasn't getting accepted on our app. Yeah, it's all over the place. And I think it's great. I was very early on, I loved in-person coaching so much that I don't know. I was like resistant to the content creation, even though we were posting stuff like back in the day. It didn't come as naturally. We didn't love it. But I think there's huge value in the impact that you can make that way. So I've embraced that a ton more, and yeah, it's going well.
The content thing is tough. Once you get a grasp on it and you just realize that I need to do this, but also like, what's the kind of message that you want to set out for, and like who you doing the content for? Once you kind of like get on that and like get some trajectory of what is going to be, first of all, like what's the message I want to send out? And then it kind of moves on to how do I make this so people will actually watch the video? That's the next trick. Because you can sit there and be like, I'm giving you all this great information, but it's like, if it's not catchy, or if people are just gonna, people now, especially, you even think about how yourself, where you're just scrolling, if it doesn't catch your eyes for the first couple of seconds, no one's ever going to watch that video. And I was talking to, who was I talking to? When James Smith talks about it, like, you literally have 3 seconds to catch that person's fucking attention. And whatever you say in the rest of the video, of course you want to get your message across, but it takes time I don't know, it's taken me time to master that little craft of how do I grab people's attention, what's going to be an interesting reel, and what's the message I want to fucking send on it. For ages I was like, this is the hardest thing of what I do when I was PTing, super busy.
Yeah. A shift that I made a couple years ago that I'm really leaning into now, it also translates to my training. Like, obviously I love this stuff. I read about it as much as I can. I read studies, whatever, but like, you and I, where we're at right now, could learn nothing else about strength and conditioning or the science behind it or anything. No new exercises, nothing. But if we become better communicators, we can be much, much better coaches, right? When you have that person in front of you, it's not about presenting a meta-analysis to them and having the most correct info. It's how you package it, how you connect with that person in front of you. And we all understand that for coaching. What I think a lot of people miss out on, because there's so much like brain rot and like other crazy stuff out there in the internet, content creation is really the same thing. It's just a communication style, right? So many people are against something like a hook. They're like, oh man, people don't pay attention right away. It's like, man, I don't know. I love your content and stuff, but sometimes you really hit me with a hook. And I'm like, oh man, I'm watching this all the way through. And I think it's just another way. Like, we have this information here that can help people. How do we package it? Now, when we talk about content, I don't have an athlete in front of me that I have to connect with. It's a broad group of people, but still breaking it down to like, what's my target avatar? How do I imagine the person that I'm trying to talk to here? And how do I package this information so that that person actually takes it on, unpacks the info, and is able to find value in it? And I think when we break down coaching or content creation, just to basic elements of both communication and just human psychology, that's where then you earn somebody's attention enough to actually get into the weeds for like more of the expertise that you have. Because if you never make that connection in person, like, I'm sure you've met people, I know that I have, they know their stuff, but they don't connect. They're just trying to be right, or they're just trying to like dump information on someone, where you see the person's eyes gloss over and they're not accepting information. They're like, okay, that person's a shit communicator. But the same thing goes with content. So something that I started to do as I was more aware of that is, man, when I go back, some of my older content, like especially on YouTube, is just like so autistic. Like, I'm just instant. I'm just like, all right, guys, so we're going to do this, and I'm going to show you different ways to blah, blah, blah. And like, people who are just viewing that, they have I didn't tell them like who it's for. I didn't tell them what problem we're solving. I didn't tell them why I'm someone they should listen to. I'm just some dude with a mid physique preaching about whatever, and they're just like, I don't know, like, swipe off, right? So I think that like communication style there is important. And where I really saw that, like on YouTube in particular, like, I don't like to humble brag that much, right? But there was one video that I did where I put a ton of work into it. It was a 20-minute video, had a videographer for it, like went the whole 9 yards, right? And in the intro, I mentioned that, my gym sees more jiu-jitsu athletes than any other gym in the world, right? Which I can pretty confidently say.
And champions, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
Doubt.
And I made that statement, and the amount of messages that I got from people that are like, is this true? Like, it landed. And I was like, damn, dude, I need to actually do like intros on videos more often, like just shit like that. Like, and you go to someone, you go to Mike Israetel's page, and like, when he's doing a YouTube video, he, for whatever faults we have or may hold against Israel, something he does do consistently. He's like, hey, I'm a professor of kinesiology, blah blah blah. I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt. Like, he goes through those things so that immediately someone's like, okay, I kind of want to listen to this guy. So I think it's just communication. Like, how do we get good at communication? How do you package those useful nuggets? And once I started viewing it like that, as like a problem to be solved, as opposed to like, I don't know, do I do this post shirtless to, you know what I mean? You get out of the vanity side.
Or why is no one watching my videos? Or the algorithm sucks.
Exactly. And it's like, dude, you don't have to change anything about you to just communicate a little bit better. And that's how I look at it now too. Like, sometimes a video that I think is going to do well doesn't do that well. And I watch it as a viewer and I'm like, okay, that hook was not very compelling. Like, I didn't set the stage,
Yeah.
And I think you in particular have gotten really good with that, where like your first couple seconds of that video, you set that stage for somebody. You either tell them like how this is going to help them, or you talk about like, who you're reviewing in the video and how that information is going to benefit them, or whatever it is. Immediately they're like, I'm going to watch this, which then opens the door for you to really start to share your expertise and provide that value. But if you skipped that first part, you'd probably get half, a quarter, a tenth of the views,
Yeah. You just go like, just tell them what's going to happen in the video. This is a clip of so and so doing this, and then you can break out into it. But literally, a big thing. We're going to kind of wrap this up in a sec, but is using the platforms for what they are. Like Instagram, TikTok, short form content. YouTube, long form content. Don't try to do long form content on this. Like, no one's going to sit on their Instagram and watch a fucking 6-minute video. No one does that. But people when they're ready to watch a long video, they'll go YouTube for that. And you have to respect what the platforms are there for. And the audience and algorithm, whatever, will reward you for that if you're using them appropriately.
For sure. Yeah. I think there was a podcast with Austin Yoakum and Angus Bradley where they were talking about this. And so, Austin was talking about how
it was actually Bradley that mentioned that to me. So shout out Angus. Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this? Yeah, where
tell us, yeah.
Yeah, they broke down content creation like dating, and they're like, short form content is the first date, and your goal on the first date is not to trauma dump, is not to tell them your whole life story. You're just trying to get to that second date, right? And they compared it to like, if you try to fit long form information into a short form medium, it's like trauma dumping on that first date. You're probably not going to get that second date, and then the entire ecosystem of your content sort of falls apart.
the ecosystem. Exactly. Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. Where can we find you, Alex Sterner? What are you pushing?
Yeah. My Instagram is my name, alex.sterner. My business, which is much more focused on strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu, is at Electrum_Performance. And then YouTube is Electrum Performance as well.
Sick, brother. Mate, always a pleasure to catch up. Good to speak to you, man.
Absolutely. You as well.
All right, brother. Speak soon.